Rebel. Reject. Create.
Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to the Rebel, Reject, Create podcast. And today, my guest is Sofie Marin, the founder and CEO of Arts Dynamics, a creative and a tech business strategist, board member of the Fuglesang Space Center. And she also runs Art Dynamics entrepreneur meetups to help artists and creators monetize their creativity using technology. Wow, so many big words there. I think I fell over my own tongue about 3 times. Welcome, Sofie.
Thank you so much.
Now, I mean, I look at the organizations you're involved in and the work you've done and the things you say, online on all of your platforms. Why do you believe so strongly in creativity?
Well, I believe that creativity is the heart and soul and core of who we are as human beings, our human experience even here on Earth. If you look at children and when we grew up even, and go to yourself, I know definitely with myself when I was a kid, the imagination is there, the creativity is there. It's just who we are, that we see the wonders and the magic of the world. But then when we grow up, that tends to disappear. And I just find that creativity is just part of us, growing and expanding who we are and expanding, consciousness even. There is this quote saying, dead fish float downstreams, but it takes a live one to go upstreams. And I find for me, that's what creativity is all about. It's about life and source and love and abundance.
Great. Now, Sir Ken Robinson has a whole TED talk about how we lose touch with that creativity. What's your theory? Do you agree with him?
Yeah, totally. I think that we are very much conditioned to feel and to believe that creativity has no place in society.
Right. I actually saw a really cool Facebook post that said the next time that someone laughs at you for wanting to be an artist, force them to spend a week with no music, with no books, with no television, with no movies, and see how much they value art after that.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And I remember one time when I was on an international global board and the chairperson introduced us to each other. And the person, she picked each and every one of us and she gave like an introduction about who we were and what we stood for. And when she came to me, it was like, this is Sofie Marin. She is creative.
Oh.
And I knew there and then that these are values that are not really being treasured in this particular environment. So I obviously quit shortly after.
Right.
Because I also believe that there is a place for creativity, and there are, as always, there sometimes that's cherished more often than other times. And in this particular case, it wasn't. So it was just my cue that this wasn't the right setting. So yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I often explain creativity as breaking the rules, because when you follow the rules, you get more of the same thing, right? Which is quite often what big organizations want. But when you break the rules, you get unexpected answers. What value do you see that creativity brings to the world?
Well, as you said, creativity, the whole notion of creativity is to challenge status quo, is to see beyond the borders, is to see what people don't see, feel, or experience right now. It's really about often creative people are ahead of the curve. They're picking up on things that haven't happened yet, and they are also connected to a higher frequency, and that way also pick up on things. So for me, creativity is what helps us. I mean, if we weren't creative and if we didn't give place for creativity, we wouldn't be where we are today. That's for sure.
Right. Now, obviously right now there's a lot of talk about AI, and I think a lot of creative people are a little bit worried that, their jobs are going to be the next ones on the line. Do you think that's possible? Is AI creative enough, or is it creative at all to be pushing creative people out of work?
I would say yes, 100%, and no.
100%.
100%. There is, of course, there is a lot of fear. I see the same thing in the cultural and creative industries.
Mm.
And yes, AI is super smart and it's just getting smarter. I hear and I've heard from the very beginning that AI cannot be creative, AI cannot create. I don't know if you remember the Will Smith videos when he was eating spaghetti and people were like, ha ha ha, AI cannot do that. But if you look at AI today, where we are when we're recording this podcast, it's already almost impossible to distinguish between what's real and what's not. So yes, AI is taking over many things, and the more AI is also being used, obviously it will also be smarter and smarter. But having said that, as artists and creators, we have value because we understand what it means to be humans. We understand what it means to be biological beings, and the stories and the storytelling that we can tell and that we can share as artists, as creators, that's something that is unique to us. So I think we are correct in the sense that we should definitely not be naive when it comes to AI. I wholeheartedly believe that AI at one point will have, reach singularity. And yeah, it's going to be tough when that happens. But at the same time, as long as we are around, there will always be a need for us to connect and to meet and to learn from each other. And stories have been around forever, and I think will be around forever too.
Right. Now, we mentioned earlier that a lot of environments are not keen on creativity, and actually, there's quite a lot of shaming going on around being creative, and then there's all this fear around AI and what's going on with technological advances. What do you say to people about stepping into your creative power? What do people need to do to be able to embrace this, what I still firmly believe is a human superpower?
Well, when you step into your creative side and your more artistic or even intuitive side, with that comes often a lot of fear and shame, as you said. And from my own personal experience, it often goes back to earlier in our lives, when we were being told or, told that it wasn't okay, or we were shown that we had to dim ourselves, or, we didn't fit in, or people questioned that around us. So we dimmed ourselves, we shrank because it was easier that way to not cause unnecessary attention. So I just find that whenever we feel those kinds of feelings, a fear of being visible, fear of standing in our own truth, it's good to go back to see when did it actually start
Right.
and why.
Right. And is that still valid?
Exactly. There is this rain protocol. Have you heard about that? This Shaolin rain protocol. I love
No.
No, I love it because it's a rain protocol. It's a Shaolin a protocol that is used. The R stands for recognize. So
Hmm.
whenever you're feeling any feelings around what you just described, first of all, recognize that you are feeling that. The A stands for acknowledge and accept. Why is this coming up? And this is coming up for me. Then the I stands for investigate. Okay, so where is this coming from? You
Mm.
know, the layers behind the layers behind the layers.
Yeah.
And then non-identify, to go outside of that and looking into that to see what you make of it. And then from that, you can make an informed decision to move forward. I find that helps a lot when you want to sort of explore limiting beliefs and exploring, the things that are sort of suppressing creativity. Because once you start to unleash creativity, with that often comes other feelings that can be rather tough. So also
Yeah.
surround yourself with great people to support you, I'd say.
That reminds me, when you put it all like that, of a concept that I first heard of. I think it was in a Nelson Mandela context. Was it's not that people actually fear failure. Because if you fail, nothing changes. What most people actually fear is success, because then things are going to change. And if you suddenly start creating stuff, things are going to change.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a different kind of control as well. Normally we tend to learn to control ourselves, or we are being forced into controlling ourselves. But with creativity, it still needs boundaries and a safe space for it to be fully unleashed. It actually means a lot to me, this particular question. And I actually wrote down that particular quote that you mentioned.
Mm.
Because I feel that by stepping into our light, we are allowing others to also be in their full power. And this is one of the things that I see the most when I coach my creators, because I coach and speak with creators every day almost. It's, the need for them to shrink, and they are afraid of being visible. But when we talk about when you are actually in your full power and you have that light and you use that to do good for others, you actually enable others to do the same.
Right.
And there's something in there that is a very, very powerful quote. Thank you for highlighting it.
Yeah. Well, while we're going down that line, it was also quite interesting. One of my previous interviewers a little while ago said that all creativity is a collaboration. So picking up on that thought that, when you do something, you make space for other people. I think because you're always riffing on the past, on what you already know, what you've learned, what you've seen other people do, you're often working in a team, maybe not overtly, but everyone in your orbit is kind of actually supporting you, helping you, and what have you. Do you find that people who've embraced their creativity are worse or better able to deal with the society and the challenges around them?
Oh, that's a good question. It depends. I'd say that when you work as a, it depends on what level of how far you've come, how mature you are,
Right.
not as a person, but in how you use your creativity. If you're not really used to using your creativity as this source of power, then it can be rather challenging. You don't know how to fit in. You might often clash with people or have trouble with authorities, and this and that and the other. But the more you get to know yourself, the more you embrace your creativity, the more you learn to master also creativity as a force. It's like in Star Wars, the Jedi.
The Force.
I think it's the same here. The more you learn to actually not control creativity, because in a way it cannot be controlled, but rather master and hold the space for creativity, then it will be easier and easier to also collaborate and work with others. There is a lot of ego involved often when it comes to creativity and innovation. But again, it depends on what level you are at. And the more you lean into it and the more secure you are in yourself, the easier it will be to embrace collaborations, teamwork, and to work with others.
I love that answer because there's so many myths around creativity, right? The lone genius creating quietly in their little tower. And also this idea that you have to be a genius, right? All the examples of really creative people are really exceptional human beings as well. But is that actually necessary?
To be a genius?
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean when you say genius? How do you define a genius?
That's a very good question. I'm kind of using the sort of general accepted definition of genius, which is someone who is appreciably better at something than most other people.
Well, I might look at creativity in a slightly different way. For me, creativity is not something that we own or that we are. As an artist, especially for me, when you work in the cultural and creative space, for instance, but even I guess in other areas, you can be creative no matter what you do. When you hold the space for creativity, it's more allowing creativity to flow through you. You don't own creativity. Creativity is something that surrounds us. Our world was created. We are creating our worlds with our thoughts, with the spoken word. Even in religions, we talk about creation and a creator. So genius, for me, it's about creativity in itself is source. So whoever channels that channels source energy, if that makes sense. If that genius or not, who's to say? I know when I founded Arts Dynamics, that came to me really strongly when I was working on the vision and the mission and the purpose and the ikigai of what I wanted to build. And I just came to this realization that I don't own this company. It's not about me even. This is actually about holding the space for arts and to more be a guardian of the arts and of artists, in a sense, holding the space for, just like a producer is doing for a production, let's say.
Yeah.
So is that genius or not? I don't know. But
Right.
creativity, in a sense, I guess, is a genius energy. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. It's a fantastic answer. It's not one that I've had before, so that's even better.
Yeah.
So, what can people like us, like you and me, and people who are listening to this who are also interested in creativity, what can we actually do to make the world a better place, to get more people creative and overcoming these barriers so that we can, I don't know, stand a greater chance of fulfilling ourselves and our own purpose?
Well, the more I lean into my own creativity and the more I work with creativity the way I do, the more I also come to the conclusion that it's not about changing the outer world, it's actually being responsible for who we are and our world. Because if we allow ourselves to be creative, if we allow ourselves to be in our full power, then that will then have ripple effects on the outer world. So I think that the answer to that is, the oxygen mask first and walking
Mm,
the first. So I would actually like to then say, focus on yourself. Are you living your full potential? Are you being fully creative and in flow and in tune? Are you leaning in and going with that kind of energy? And if not, start there. Don't worry so much about the rest of the world, but rather sort of fine tune your own frequency and, take responsibility for how you show up in the world and what kind of role model you want to be for others.
I love
That's
that.
for me is where the magic is.
Yeah, that's that quote that often gets attributed to Gandhi, but that he never said, right? Be the change you want to see in the world. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sophie, I mean, it's amazing talking to you, and it's a real pity we've only actually got 20 minutes. But I have to ask you one last question.
Mhm.
And I think I know the answer. You've kind of actually answered it already, but I want you to see if you can give me a short, sharp one. Why do you do what you do?
I do what I do based on my own experiences as a creator and the journey that I've gone through, and the hardships that come with it often, and the help that I've had along the way, that has helped me to go to where I am today. And now I have an opportunity to pay it forward. So I just feel like if I can do anything to make life better for others, then I couldn't be happier. The world needs artists and creators to be in their full power and to be happy and thriving. And if there is anything that I can pass on from what I've learned, then I couldn't be happier.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for coming to speak to me today, Sophie. It's been absolutely awesome chatting to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And for anybody watching this, if you're interested in arts dynamics and all the work that Sophie gets up to, have a look at the show notes. We've got all of her links to her social platforms, her website, with plenty of information where you can find out more. And remember for yourself to keep on rebelling and rejecting so that you can get creating. Until next time, be more creative.